Hey guys, welcome back to the Far Better Podcast. We're going to jump right in today to Norman Geisler's Importance of Premillennialism. You can go and read this blasphemous article if you would like, and I hope you understand what we mean when we say blasphemous here in just a second. There are some shocking things that are written in this, and we both have a book in our library by Geisler and Nick's.
Got a couple.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, especially in Logos, my library for Geisler's probably got more than just a few.
Did Geisler do the I don't have enough faith to be an atheist? Yes. And then I've got another one from him, which that one's good, but I got another one from him called Legislating Morality.
Yep.
And that's good.
Yeah. And he did the General Biblical Introduction,
Right,
which we used in school.
Yeah.
And it's a very well put together, for the most part, book about how the Bible was preserved through history. But there's just like several reasons that he lists. We're not gonna go through all of them. We're gonna go through two, just because of time's sake and because I don't want to get too upset. The first one is the one that just, my mouth was ajar when I read it. Without a millennium, God would break an unconditional land promise to Abraham. God promised the land of Canaan to Abraham and his descendants forever. This land covered everything of the west of the Jordan River from Egypt to Iraq. The Lord made a covenant with Abraham, and he quotes Genesis 15:18 that he will give this land from the river of Egypt all the way to the river of Euphrates. God said to Abraham, I'll give you the land in which you're a stranger, all the land of Canaan, as an everlasting possession. For all the land which you see, I give you, and to your descendants forever. And so he talks about this land promise was also unconditional, since only God sealed it by passing through the split sacrifice while Abram slept. He said to him, bring me a 3-year-old heifer, and talks about all of the guidelines of all of this, Genesis 15:9-18. This is where it gets weird. The Bible declares that the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. Romans 11:29. That's going to be important in just a second, because evidently they are revocable. God's promises don't depend on our faith, but on his faithfulness. If we are faithless, he remains faithful. He cannot deny himself, 2 Timothy 2:13. God's promise was immutable. When God made a promise to Abraham, because he could swear by no one greater, he swore by himself, and it talks about Hebrews 6:13-18, that it's impossible for God to lie. But watch this here. This land promised to Abraham has never yet been fulfilled. However, according to the Bible, it will yet be fulfilled, and he lists some scriptures. Matthew 19:28, Acts 1:6-8, Romans 11, in the future, in the 1,000-year reign of Christ, Revelation 21-6. This is where it just got downright, you had to lie to write this. You could not tell the truth and then write what you're saying here. Even after the days of Joshua, 21:43, the land promise was yet future, Jeremiah 11:5, Amos 9:14-15. Without a literal national fulfillment such as the millennium, God would have broken an unconditional covenant, which is impossible, Hebrews 6:17-18. Okay, now, Matt, I want you to read. Do you have Joshua 21 pulled up?
Yes.
Read verse 43, and let's just start there.
Okay, yeah, so just verse 43
Yes.
is, so the Lord gave to Israel all the land of which he had sworn to give to their fathers, and they took possession of it and dwelt in it.
Wouldn't, just 43, we'll go to 44 and 45 in a second. Wouldn't that have been the time to say, but there's still some land that he kept back for this reason, and he'll give it to them at this later date? Like, this is the time to say that.
Right, yeah, this would be the moment.
Now read verse 44 and 45.
The Lord gave them rest all around according to all that he had sworn to their fathers, and not a man of all their enemies stood against them. The Lord delivered all their enemies into their hand. Not a word fell of any good thing which the Lord had spoken to the house of Israel. All came to pass.
Okay, again, I'm trying here. I'm really trying to be as respectful as possible, because Norman Geisler is a man. He has a soul, all that. I understand the implications of teaching error and what that does, but still,
it's comical.
You cannot help but laugh a little, because to even try to insinuate that verse 43 somehow taught that it was yet future.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's a different translation he's using, that they did the bad part of that, but when it says the Lord gave to Israel all the land which he's sworn, they took possession and dwelt in it. If I tell you, Matt, that I'm going to give you something and you take possession of it, the rental car we returned yesterday, I told them that I would return that rental car Monday, December 30th at noon. They did not take possession of that car until I gave it to them. If I don't give it to them, have they taken possession of it?
No.
No. Now, just trying here. I'm trying so hard to be respectful, but let's say I gave them the vehicle minus the tires. Would they have all of the vehicle?
No, I don't think they would.
No. If I took out the gas tank, would they have all of it? If I left anything out, then I can't say I gave all of the vehicle back to them. If I took out a seat cover, would I have given back all? No, not if I got it with a seat cover in it. That's an issue that just the literal language has. But when you read verse 44 and 45, especially verse 45, where it says, not a word failed, past tense.
Yeah.
All came to pass, past tense.
Yeah.
Then I have no choice but to say, God did not break this unconditional promise. He already fulfilled it.
Well, even what he says, even after the days of Joshua, and he references 21:43, says the land promise was yet future. But when he gives verse 43 there, 21:43 of Joshua, it says it's already been done. It's all past tense. The verses 43 through 45, all past tense. This is all already happened. He already gave it to them. Matter of fact, they had rest from all their enemies. Nobody stood against them. The Lord delivered all their enemies into their hand. They dwelt in the land. They took possession of it and dwelt in it because God gave it to them. That's the whole point in verse 43. That all Israel, they had been given all the land which they had been sworn by God they have, and then they took possession of it and dwelt in it. All past tense, like it all has already happened.
His Jeremiah 11:5 reference in my Logos Bible software for New King James Version that I use, it does say that I may establish the oath which I have sworn to your fathers and give them a land flowing with milk and honey. It is this day. And I answered and said, so be it, Lord. But Jeremiah 32:22 says, you have given them this land, of which you swore to their fathers to give them, a land flowing with milk and honey. Geisler is a theologian, a scholar, people would say. Why is it that we could find in 2 minutes the verse that defeats his own argument? Well, maybe it's because Jeremiah is a retelling of what was promised, not saying, oh, it's yet to take place. And we're talking about a time when God's people were in bondage.
Right.
They had denied God's covenant and been taken away from what he had clearly given to them. Whose fault was that? It was their own fault. Now, anyways, oh goodness. I'm telling you, man, like I read this yesterday as we were looking over and preparing, and I thought, I have never once seen somebody say this and blatantly include Joshua 21:40. Most people don't include it. And it is a talking point. People say, Israel still owed some land.
Right.
But I've never seen someone be like, well, Joshua 21:43 does say that he gave them everything, but not really. Which is it?
Future.
Yeah, it's yet future.
It's future even though it's in past tense.
It's future in past tense.
Well,
that's right.
I told the story about flying next to the Baptist preacher.
Yeah.
And that's what my conversation was like with him.
Yeah.
It was all like stuff like that, and you're like, well, wait a second. And here, let me give you a little hint on how to talk to somebody about the Bible. Like 99% of the time, when someone gives you a verse, just go ahead and go look at that verse and read around it, because usually
there's
the
something.
answer is right there in the context. And you don't have to be a genius. You don't have to have the Bible memorized, but just every time they do it, like, hey, let me go look that verse up, because either the verse doesn't say what they've said that it says, or it says exactly what they said, but it's taken out of context when you look at the rest of it. So,
right.
That's what has if he just, it's kind of funny. He doesn't quote anything from that. He just says it's yet future. Here's a verse for it being yet future.
True to your point.
Yeah.
True to your point. Verse 1 says, the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah, saying, hear the words of this covenant, and speak to the men of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and say to them, Thus says the Lord God of Israel, cursed is the man who does not obey the words of this covenant, which I commanded, past tense, to your fathers in the day that I brought them out of the land of Egypt from the iron furnace, saying, Obey my voice and do according to all that I command you, so shall you be my people, and I will be your God, comma, begin verse 5, that I may establish the oath which I have sworn to your fathers to give them a land flowing with milk and honey, as it is this day. I answered and said, So be it, Lord. Then the Lord said to me, Proclaim all these words in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem, saying, Hear the words of this covenant and do them. For I earnestly exhorted your fathers in the day I brought them up out of the land of Egypt, and to this day, rising early and exhorting, saying, Obey my voice. Yet they did not obey, nor incline their ear, but everyone followed the dictates of his evil heart. Therefore I'll bring upon them the words of this covenant, which I commanded them to do, but which they have not done. So if it's already been something he promised, then he's already given it to by Joshua 21. Like you said, you can't just randomly take an arrow and shoot it at a part of the country and be like, that part of the country, because the arrow hit it, is evil. That's not how it works. You got to have facts and evidence to back it up. Just because it says something about the seed promise, or not the seed promise, the land promise, doesn't mean that's what it's actually talking about. It's call back. It's a calling back to what was being discussed. Anyways, this one made you the most upset.
Yeah.
Not that the other one didn't, but like when you saw this, you're like, what? You verbally exclaimed, no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And so we added this one to be a part of what we'll close out by saying. But number 6, premillennialism adds urgency to evangelism.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. When he read this, I was like, no, it doesn't. It adds time to it.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's going to be 1,000-year end, you got 1,000 extra years.
Yeah.
Like, there's no urgency. Are you kidding me?
And not to mention,
you get a second chance if you're alive
think
during
about
all
this
that.
too. Let's take it from the general viewpoint that we've seen people often take. Raptured or taken. Okay?
Yeah.
Then there's this tribulation period. The left behind, according to Tim LaHaye and other popular books of that type of mentality, have a chance to do what? Become righteous. You can literally change. So if I believe in premillennialism, I agree with you. There is absolutely no need for any urgency until it happens.
You're like, oh no, it got real.
Yeah, oh man.
I gotta
what?
start being
I can't
righteous.
find my wife. What? And if I believe that this is true, then it actually teaches the very opposite of what God was saying. And something that Geisler even wrote, where Jesus says, Occupy till I come, Luke 19:13, night is coming, no one can work. We don't know when Jesus is coming back, though. Not even Jesus knows. Well, if that's true, that we don't know when he's coming back, if this is true, though, then all I know is, man, even if I'm not the raptured, guess what?
Yeah.
I got time. Even if I'm left behind. So eat, drink, and be merry, and then the moment you can't find the righteous people anymore, get your life together. Really?
Yeah.
That's not a dangerous thing. If Jesus had said in one of the gospel accounts, I'll be coming back in 2045, book it, 110%, 2045. What would 99% of all Christians be doing right now?
Yeah.
Whatever we wanted.
Yeah.
Unless we were really sick or really old and not going to make it to 2045. But you and I, Lord willing, we'll see 2045, and we'll have the opportunity to be in that. That's only 20 years from now at this point in time. So I'll be 51. You'll be 92. No. What will you be at that point?
60.
60. You'll be 92. But that's the thing. We should both be living at that point.
Yeah.
So we would make the argument then that since we should both be living, we could be doing whatever we want. But there's a reason we're not told when he's coming back.
Right.
There has to be an urgency to evangelism because we don't know when he's coming back.
Well, look at that very first sentence is so alarming. Premillennialism.
Because you can't say it.
Yeah, I can't. That's why I don't like the doctrine. I can't say
you just
it.
hate it because you don't know how to say it.
I don't like to spell it either.
I'll say it for you.
Premillennialism, especially in those who hold the imminency of Christ's return, creates a certain sense of urgency not generated by the other views. If you go by the Bible, and the view that, we hold because it's from the Bible.
Right. Imagine
there's a more urgent view of that, and that is we don't know when Christ is going to come back. There is no 1,000-year reign, no second chance. You better get it right now.
Right.
Let me ask you, in all honesty, is that urgent, or let's just ask, is that more urgent than what he is describing? Mm-hmm. Absolutely more urgent. I mean, there's just no way around it.
Well, and you look at this too, he does the exact thing we talked about last week.
Yeah.
He says, it's no coincidence. Let me show you why you should believe this.
Yeah.
That many of the modern missionary movements, and he lists some names, and evangelistic efforts, and he lists some names, Billy Graham is one of them, were headed by premillennialists. So you should be a premillennialist too. Now, we don't have time to cover this.
Right.
But the very next one was also something that would just be the same thing. Premillennial imminency adds an incentive for holiness. No, it doesn't.
It doesn't, yeah.
It can't. And there's something that I'll say on this, and then we'll close it out. The new Left Behind movie that came out back in 2015 with Chad Michael Murray and Nicolas Cage.
Sign me up for anything Nicolas Cage, right?
If you haven't seen it, you should watch it, but not for the reason that many people that made it would want you to.
Yeah.
There is this flight attendant, because the premise is during one of the flights, people are raptured and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. There's this flight attendant who is actively trying to have an affair on the plane with somebody, like flirting with a married man. She gets raptured.
What?
Now, I remember I saw that movie with Dad because he wanted to watch it because of the class. He wanted to know, what are they going to say? What are they doing? And it was PG-13, so we all went to see it, me, Megan, and Mom and Dad. And when that happened, and she goes missing, and Nicolas Cage is like, she must have been raptured. Dad and I both went and looked at each other and thought, okay, so adultery is suddenly okay?
It's okay.
God's fine with that now? It's and the reason she was known to have been raptured is she had a cross in her little cart. Oh, yeah. And so she was obviously religious. Yeah. Well, the righteous are who's supposed to be raptured. Uh-huh. And last I checked, Jesus said that it's not righteous to lie with another man or another woman who is taken, let alone in general, if they're not your spouse.
Right.
And yet that's the whole thing, is it says it adds an incentive for holiness. It really doesn't.
No.
And I may be wrong, and maybe someone listening is going to say, you guys have got this all backwards. Prove me wrong, please. Show me how this is wrong, because if I know...
glad to talk about it.
Yeah, if I know that if I am unrighteous, I'll be left behind. And the way that those books that talk about being left behind, not just the Left Behind series, but even some actual theological books written on it, all say the same thing. You can still become the righteous. Then okay, then I have 7 years to become righteous. Same is true if the tribulation is what they would call the midway point. 3.5 years of all of us being tribulated, if you will, and then the righteous are then taken. Well, during that 3.5 years, I could just change and just be righteous then. Or the way that the Bible actually teaches it is, you don't know. So be ready always.
Right.
No matter what. Matt, you have anything else you want to say on this? I'm mad. I want to know what he says further.
Yeah.
Oh, answering some objections.
Yeah.
Oh, that could be its own episode. We're not going to do that, though.
Can't do that. When you think about those movies that they did a series of them before with Kirk Cameron.
Yep.
And I remember watching them and going, I just
wow,
want
this is true?
No. Actually, my wife and I sat down and we were like, let's just watch and see what they're doing. See if there's anything in here that we could go, oh.
Hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. This is how we need to address this for people trying to, learn the truth. We need to go, hey, this is a point that they make. It's not right, but here you go. It's the most compelling argument. Nothing was compelling.
Right.
Nothing was compelling. There's a whole lot of verses taken out of context from Revelation and Daniel. I can't remember if there was... Revelation and Daniel were the main ones I can remember. I think there might have been another book that they took some things out of context with. I don't even think they took Matthew 24 out of context, but they really easily could have.
Right.
But it was just such an interesting thing, and I thought, people actually believe this stuff. And, but yeah, it's just... it's not biblical.
No, and I think that's the thing. I know we laughed a lot in this episode, and I get it. But truly, when you've studied the truth and you read what the Bible says, anything that's contrary to that, and so blatantly so, can become comical. You want to blame somebody for why we laugh? Blame Geisler for ignoring verses 44 and 45 of Joshua 21. Blame Geisler for ignoring Jeremiah 11, 1 through 5 and following.
Yeah.
And the fact that
And
it's
even
so
naming
clear.
it in there.
Yes.
Like using it as his evidence, but
Yes.
it is evidence to the contrary.
If somebody told you, like, let's just put it this way. If a doctor was found to say, yeah, you need surgery and this, and you found out that actually wasn't true, and what the doctor was saying to prove that you needed surgery sounded legit, but then you find out you didn't have to have that surgery. You didn't have to have that invasive thing done. What ends up happening to that doctor?
Oh, yeah, he's in trouble.
He's in big trouble. And yet, for some reason, with theology, we're just like, I trust you, man. Whatever you say, you put Jeremiah 11:5 down, that has to be true. This is why I want to say as we close this episode out, it is so important, as you mentioned, Matt, that we take the time to study the context. If we won't do that, we're going to get into tons of trouble with things like this.
Right.
But if we'll study the context, we'll understand what's coming down the pipe, and we'll know what to be prepared to do and not do. Matt, thank you for being with me this week. We're looking forward to next week and the week after, where we're going to talk about how premillennialism defies truth, and we're going to use some of the charts that we were given as students. And so one thing that I'll say on this is I don't know if I'm allowed to share these charts or not. I want to go ahead and kind of indicate to you that I may not be able to. Part of the reason is these charts were shared with us as students, but they were compiled over many, many years. And the very first page says, I don't really know, as my dad was putting it together, where all of them came from. I don't have the ability to give credit to all of the sources. If I am allowed to share them with you, though, we'll find a way to make that possible and make it where you can do that. Don't forget to follow the Scattered Abroad Network on all major podcast platforms. And don't forget to please God now, so our eternity can be far better.